Finally, the regular season's here. We will not go gently. Comfort is dangerous in this business. Standard is standard. Because iron makes iron sharp. The standard is winning. And that's what it's about. Got miles to go before we sleep. Got to be 10 toes into this thing. We understand the daunting task that's in front of us. We're excited, but excitement is not going to get it done. We're going to go in attack mode because that's what's required. We're going to unleash hell.
Welcome to Sports Talk. Here's your host, Alan Michael.
It's time to play ball.
Welcome to Sports Talk. I'm Alan Michael. I'm hopped up on espresso and grapefruit on a weird July evening. And a great man once said, man, I'm weird. When the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. Get in where you fit in on sportstalk.com. Every episode, every blog, all of it lives there, along with links to all the social media gimmicks at Alan Maggle on Twitter, AlanMaggle. That's where I party most often. YouTube is where we live stream. So if you're listening live, please don't be a jagoff. Hit the subscribe button and make me feel good inside. And subscribe to the podcast too while you're at it. And if you're listening to the podcast version, thank you for downloading. If you're not, you can download the podcast on any of the podcatchers, iTunes, Stitcher, all of them. It's right there at your fingertips on your mobile device. Talking Mike Tomlin today. It is July the 23rd, 2015, and he is 9 seasons in as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. And today, Mike Tomlin signed a 2-year contract extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's getting paid $7 million a year through 2018, making him one of the top 5 highest paid coaches in the NFL. And as the Steeler head coach over the past 8 seasons, going into his 9th, he has definitely lived up to the standards set by his 2 predecessors, if you ask me. As we all know, the standard is the standard. It's crazy to me to think that this is his 9th season. And he's probably, unless something crazy happens, going to make it a decade. It feels like yesterday. I was on college radio in Pittsburgh, and the city was just reeling. I was shocked. Everybody was kind of shocked. The Cowher stepped down. And some were even more discombobulated around town when they heard that this young black head coach no one ever heard of was taking Bill Cowher's place. Not too long after Cowher just won a Super Bowl. Finally got his Super Bowl ring. And then they hire Mike Tomlin, a black head coach in Pittsburgh, never done before. That's what we talked about a lot on the college radio show at Pitt. We spent a significant amount of time discussing on the sports talk show on WPTS Pittsburgh how the city would treat a black head coach. And it's funny to think now it's 2015, and the city has had a very similar relationship with Tomlin that they had with Cowher. And, Yinzers like to blame Tomlin like they used to blame Cowher when the Steelers aren't doing too good. He has been to 2 Super Bowls like Cowher, won one and lost the other, just like Cowher. And you know what? All that talk about it, that I think maybe just some of us, it was a little closer. A lot of people in Pittsburgh I'll say are racist, but they're not outwardly racist like in some other rival AFC North cities. I mean, racial tensions have never really been a factor with Mike Tomlin. So in retrospect, silly to spend so much time talking about it. But hey, we were at college radio, and we were not the pros we are today. So Mike Tomlin, for all intents and purposes, has maintained the standard as the head coach of the mighty Pittsburgh Steelers. And he deserves these extra 2 years. Now, it's been different in certain aspects over his tenure as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers compared to Noel and Cowher. Of course, the behavior of his players appears to be significantly more brash and odd than Noel or Cowher's players. But I'm always going to give Tomlin the benefit of the doubt in that regard. He's coaching in the 2010s. The red light's always on. This show airs 24/7, 365. Hard Knocks isn't just some show on HBO. That's reality all day, every day for these pro athletes, any sport. They're on television, radio, social media. They're in the spotlight all day, every day. Their microscope is more than a reporter in a fedora or even just a network TV reporter. Tomlin's guys are being watched all day, every day. And Tomlin's guys also grew up entitled, wanting this spotlight. I mean, Noel's guys had to sell insurance in the offseason. And Cowher had to worry about Kevin Green breaking his leg wrestling on, in WCW, but he never had to worry about Kevin Green tweeting out some dick pics. And really, the 2 Super Bowls, it's not 4, but it's comparable to Cowher. And no one's we really can't compare him to Noel. We got to compare him more to Cowher. But still, the standard is the standard. And the standard may be the standard when it comes to Mike Tomlin's results. But he has been a far more interesting character than his 2 legendary predecessors. And perhaps it's just because of the era he's coaching in. Because I would assume Chuck Noll was as rough, if not more rough around the edges than Mike Tomlin seems to be. But the regimented press conferences, the unreal vocabulary, the top-notch coach speak by Mike Tomlin, I mean, it shows that just like his players, Mike Tomlin grew up wanting this spot that he has, as much as they wanted their spots on the field. Mike Tomlin was born to be a coach. He's always wanted to coach. He's wanted this. I mean, nothing showed me this more than that Sunday morning and the whole players and the interview with the players coach controversy. Mike Tomlin's reaction to being called a players coach in one of those sit-down Sunday morning pregame interviews, that's the classic moment that separates him from Noel and Cowher to me. I got the quote here. It says, this is what he said whenever he's talking about being called a players coach. Mike, you're loved by your players. You're a players coach. And he said, sometimes when they couple players coach with questions about how I wear my hair or what I choose to wear on the sidelines or what type of music I listen to, then it gets kind of old and falls into that category for me. This is what he said when he was labeled a players coach, and it was badass. Don't label me. Don't try to throw your euphemisms for black at me. He's got balls, Mike Tomlin. He wanted this spot, and he wanted to do it his way. This man loves his job. He brought a Super Bowl to Pittsburgh. Something I've wanted my entire life as a kid growing up a Steelers fan. Now, Bill Cowher delivered it to me first, but Mike Tomlin delivered one to me, and I was there. I love that guy. And he loves his spot. And he may subscribe to the standard being the standard, but he sure as hell wants to be remembered as something more than just the third head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the last 50 years. Tomlin has not guided this team to a losing season yet. Going into his 9th year. Not one. And he is obviously, so much more media is out there, more opportunities for people to bitch and moan. It sounds like he is scrutinized more than Nolan Cowher were. People call for his head a little bit more than they called for Cowher's. And sure, there's been some mediocre seasons and some uncomfortable, unfamiliar situations with player conduct and how he's dealt with it and how it appears. But that just comes with the territory playing in the super ultra hyper popular age of the NFL that we're in. The fact that Tomlin has not had a losing season, and for the most part, a lot of people might argue this, but for the most part, has kept the Steelers' integrity intact. I think that's astonishing. All the arrests going on, all the ridiculous shit going on in the NFL, making these teams look bad. I don't think the Steelers have lost any of their luster. I don't think they've lost any of that lore. I think they're just as respected as they were when Mike Tomlin took over the team. No team is safe from the entitled, foolish, and bizarre behavior of today's NFL players. I think Mike Tomlin's done a swell job in that regard, considering the circumstances. And then, I mean, as for the standard being the standard, going into this 2015-2016 season now, the standard in the NFL is to win right now or pay the consequences. And the standard for the Pittsburgh Steelers is to win Super Bowls. Mike Tomlin knows this. And the Steelers have not been to one in, 5 years now. And as well as Tomlin's done, and as nice as the contract extension is, no coach, not even a Steeler coach, is safe from the consequences of losing. So these next 2 years are going to be the most important and career-defining seasons of Mike Tomlin's coaching career, as far as I'm concerned. The Steelers, just as an organization, are going to keep a coach for a while. 8 years is a while. So now I think a mediocre season or a string of mediocre seasons, shenanigans going on with players, that kind of stuff now can bite Mike Tomlin in the ass. I think he was given the standard 5+ years as Steeler head coach, and because the Steelers aren't going to fire a guy. That's just not how the Rooneys roll. 50 years we're coming up on since Chuck Noll was first hired as the Steeler head coach. 2 guys have coached the team since him. But now Tomlin's been here 8 years. He's been with the Steelers 8 years, going into his 9th. Now the stuff that has happened during his tenure, I think stuff like that, like 8-8 seasons, players getting arrested, being combative with reporters, stirring up controversy like the awesome players coach stuff. I think the Rooneys now might not tolerate that as much as they did over the first decade. So that's why these next 2 years are so important for Mike Tomlin, because the seat's hotter. When you're a Pittsburgh Steelers head coach, the standard is you have a buffer zone of a handful of years, because that's just not how the organization is run. They're going to give you a chance to create your atmosphere, create your culture, and Mike Tomlin's culture is ingrained into the Steelers organization. Mike Tomlin is the Steelers are Mike Tomlin now. And Cowher and Knoll never let mediocrity set in for too long. They had some losing seasons. They had some mediocre seasons. But they always had the Steelers back in big games after, not too long. 5 years without an AFC title appearance, that seems a little long if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, doesn't it? So if the standard is the standard, then Mike Tomlin will be hoisting some kind of hardware between now and 2018. And the Steelers are coming off a crushing playoff loss last year. Losing to Baltimore at home. It doesn't get any lower than that. Not one bit. So Mike Tomlin has 2 years as far as I'm concerned. I don't think that next contract is set in stone by any stretch of the imagination. Beat Baltimore, win in the playoffs, and end this string of mediocrity. Because even though the Steelers were 11-5 last year, 8-8, Ocho y Ocho, as many people call it, the previous 2 years. 11-5, okay, that is a division winning record, but losing in the first round is a mediocre season. 8-8, 8-8, out in the wild card. 3 straight years of mediocrity. Mike Tomlin's next 2 years will define his career and will define where the Pittsburgh Steelers go as an organization, because a lot of people who like to panic, just like the people who like to panic about the Pirates in July when they're only 6 games out and have the wild card in hand, those same people say that the Steelers are fragile right now. The Steelers could end up becoming just like all the other NFL teams, firing coaches real quick, reactionary owners. Not to overhype it, but man, this season and probably next season even more, with Big Ben his prime is almost up. Mike Tomlin's coaching life will be on the line if this season doesn't go well. So he has 2 years. The Steelers have 2 years. The huge defining moment for the Pittsburgh Steelers today, because they basically have said to Mike Tomlin, here you go. Let's keep going where we're going. We like where we're going, but we do not like where we've been the last 3 years. Because don't you think the extension might have been longer if, say, they just lost in the AFC title? I do. But I'm happy Mike Tomlin is staying for 2 more years as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, because I think he's been a great head coach, and by far the best press conferences of any head coach in any sport. I subscribe to what Mike Tomlin does as a head coach. All right, thanks for listening to Sports Talk. I am Alan Michael, living the dream, going nowhere, getting fat, and doing nothing. Going to talk sports with you tomorrow, the biggest day in the history of sports. Go to sportstalk.com, at Alan Michael on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube and the podcast, and I'll catch your ass tomorrow. Thanks for listening.